All right, here we are. We are live on Facebook and Instagram as promised. I think I'm 1 minute late depending on what clock is correct, but it is what it is. But anywho's, it's been an interesting week, a lot of good stuff taking place, and we're going to hope that the internet stays up. Internet's been fine all day, hasn't glitched, nothing's happened. So if it goes off, then you'll know I hit a trigger word, as I did this past week twice. We both know what the key word is. You saw me post about it, so I'm not going to say that word just because it's obviously a sensitive subject right now. But what I want to do is go back a little bit and just talk a little back history really fast. I think a lot of people are getting weary right now, and it's because, one, most people weren't trained to fight. All right, so there's that. And it's like you're in the biblical moments of, like the Bible talks about, where brother will be against brother. It's going to be turmoil, little things like that. You're going to see a lot of stuff, and you're seeing Israel, a lot of stuff play out in Israel. You have a lot of Christians who are up in arms and don't know anything about the God of Israel, and they're looking pretty atrocious right now. So there's a lot of chaos and pandemonium, confusion. A lot of people don't know who to believe, who to listen to, frustrated, tired, angry, mad, sad, bitter, all these things. People looking for drama, people looking for propaganda, people looking for entrapment, people looking to bait people. I mean, we're in a true wilderness of a Build-A-Bear society where if you say one thing and someone don't like it, it's all about what they think. They don't care about why you said it. We're in this crazy world, right? Well, look in the Bible. What does the Bible say? The end times will look like that. Now, I don't know how I believe towards, will God destroy the earth like the Bible said? I don't know about all that. Now, I don't get on here and preach and pretend to be a theologian or anything like that. All right, I do my best with reading the Bible, but what I try to do, where I feel like that I got put in people's lives, are to bridge the gap between realism, common sense, what's in the laws and orders, and then kind of, I don't worry about your lives, like your lifestyle. Like, that's your choice. And somehow along the way, we have so many Build-A-Bear things that people want to get all upset and riled up about things you don't even know about yourself. And so there's a common ground to meet on where there is a foundation and a premise of what's going on right now. And if you want to know what's going on, that's what my page is for. If, like some in my inbox, God love you. Like we say in the South, God love you. But some of you, you're not reading, you're not studying, and you're not applying. And if you're just coming to my page just to have a comment in the comment box, then I'm still not going to stop you as long as you're not saying something that's agitating folks. But at the same time, there is a blueprint of what's going on right now. You can most certainly know what's going on right now. But it's going to require some reading, studying, and then application of those two. You can most certainly know what's going on right now. It is all public. It's all for you to find. However, it's not all in one place except for me. I'm the only one who's put it all in one place for you in a chronological order, which are known as these #1 bestsellers right here. Now, this one's the first one. It's smaller, and this is the second one. All right, so obviously you dab in, go okay, get your feet wet, and then you jump full-fledged in the deep end. All right, this is all current laws and orders invoked, Title 10, Title 50, what's going on with military. I'm more military-based first, then I show you what pairs with federal. Military first, then pairs with federal. So, if that old saying, if you can't run with the big dogs, get off the porch. That also is saying that if you're going to whine, fuss, complain, bicker, gripe, moan, groan, kick, cuss, all these other things, you're missing the point. You're missing the boat, because you can most certainly know what's going on. It's all lawful, and there's not a thing in the world that evil can do to stop it. You're going through it. You're going to go through it. If you're 40 years old, you live to be 100, you're going to live through it. If you're 20 years old, you live to be 100, you're going to live through it. You're going through it no matter what. So why don't you want to know exactly what's going on? So I'm the kind that's saying, look, there's a lot of names, a lot of faces out there. There's a lot of platforms. All right. There's a lot of people who just want to be a face to be a face. Have you ever noticed all the people who attack me? Most of them don't even show their face, and they have some fake name. All right. Here I am. Name, real name, face. So look at all these people who claim to be a part of this, and they're not. All right. And they're trying to trick you. They're trying to confuse you. They are wolves in sheep's clothing, a lot of them. And there's a lot of names out there that were already names that have you also confused as well. All right, I got a text this evening from someone, a big name out there. I'm not going to name their name because I don't do that. I get attacked by everybody and anybody. And that's fine, because guess what? The facts are the facts, the truth are the truth. And I show you everything current and in law. That's current and invoked. Current. You don't have to like it. And a lot of people clearly don't. And the more they don't like it, the more they show their colors that they're either ignorant and don't know what's going on, or they're a rhino and or a liberal. All right. And they hate America, and they hate our constitutional values. They hate our foundational values, and they hate everything about our foundation. It's one or the other. It can't be, it could be both as far as ignorant and also one of those. But again, they're either straight up ignorant and or they're a closet liberal, rhino, or a liberal, and they just hate America. All right, because nothing I talk about is going to hurt you or harm you. I think outside the box, because that's what special operations do. It ain't about being right or wrong. It's about getting it right. So a lot of people don't like my quote-unquote opinion, depending on what it is. A lot of people don't like the way I think. But guess what? That's why most people are in the position they're in. That's why they are unhappy. That's why they are restless and weary. It's because they can't think outside the box on anything in life. So, not my problem, again. So there's too much info out there. The good thing about that is this, straight out the gate, President Trump has mentioned the 1798 Aliens Act. Well, he left off the other portion of that on purpose. There's two parts of that. There's two laws of that. It's called the 1798 Aliens and Seditions Act. All right. That's the part he left off on purpose for a reason. All right. Because again, if he mentions 1798 Aliens Act, what should you do? Should look it up. Right. Then you're going to find out, oh, there's two parts of this. There's two laws in this one. It's called the 1798 Aliens and Seditions Act. The seditions part is where, back in the day, our founders established this. 1798, the year, all right? That's our founding fathers, all right? Our founding fathers said if you print any misinformation about what's going on during this time period, you're subject to these things, all right? So President Trump is telling you straight out the bat, when he invoked that, he's also said before what? He has said we need to have a digital Bill of Rights. We need to amend Section 230 of the Common Decency Act. He didn't name that, but that's what that is, the Common Decency. And then in this last speech, March the 4th, he specifically had two girls sit beside Melania, and the one to the right looking at the screen. He said her pictures have been taken all over the internet and vile, malicious things, all kinds of things over it. And he said, I'm signing an act into place, and he said, I'm actually going to use it myself. What he's talking about, misinformation, disinformation, all the different people, like they've done with me. They took my mother's and grandmother's photos, and they put all kinds of vile stuff all over it, and malicious, vicious things. Has nothing to do with laws and orders. Nothing to do with laws and orders. Just straight up evil people out there. All right, we got to have a basis, because now we're in the social media world. Think of all the relationships that's been destroyed based off of social media. just straight up, or a text message. Just think about all the people who judge you on one message out there. Workers, you name it. Co-workers, you name it. Emails, all this stuff has destroyed society. And then people take a message and they try to go, oh, well, you meant this. No, it's not. It didn't mean that. Look at all the things that's been destroyed. So think of that. And that's what President Trump, now they couldn't go right in and go, okay, we're going to take this out, this out, this out, this out. But they started slow with it. You've seen CNN. CNN has been, axed all the way. They're in a tiny cubicle on the outskirts of Atlanta. All right, they've gone in and they've started with the big. They had to go from top down because they had to show you top down first. Because if you went in and you said, all right, we're deleting this out, we're deleting this, and we're deleting that, and we're deleting you, and you blue check, and you red check, you're gone. Guess what they gonna do? Oh, you talking about whining, complaining, and kicking about their First Amendment, etc. But again, we have to have a foundational basis of what backs the First Amendment, what backs the Second Amendment, what backs the Constitution. And that's what I've been trying to explain. And we got to get back to a basics of that. Because you can't have everybody and the mama deciding what it is and what it ain't, what it is and what it ain't. Especially when it don't even involve you. And you may be the party that's like, hey, whoa, no. Right? And President Trump's been saying that over and over and over. So, I'm getting a ton of messages dropping down and it's distracting me. But I don't know. Someone said something about Facebook, but anyway, I'm not being shadow banned that I can tell. My internet's still going. So when you think about all the names and people out there, we're in such a selfish society. When you get on Instagram, my God have mercy. There are profile after profile after profile of nothing but females showing their body. Every other picture, every other photo, you name it. We're in a selfish society. We're in a society where everybody and their mama's a singer-songwriter. Every one of them. Oh, I'm a singer just because I can play a guitar and I can write. And everybody and their mama is all about, oh, look at me, come follow me and come to... There's too many faces and there's too much information out there. But guess who controls that? You control that. You control what you allow in your life. And again, if you love President Trump, you love this nation, you love our foundation, you love our Declaration, you love our Constitution, you love our Bill of Rights, which are the amendments. If you love this nation, shouldn't you want to know how they function and operate? Shouldn't you want to know the basis and foundation, the whole reason why you're here and you're trying to have a conversation? Well, that is the laws and the orders. So you don't have to like all of them. And I don't talk about all laws and orders. I talk about the laws and the orders that make up the blueprint of this special operation that's taking place right now. You don't need to know anything else. All you need to know are the laws and the orders that President Trump's working with. And even if you're a liberal and you took the challenge, like I said on Twitter and X, I said, come on over, liberals and haters, and get owned again by laws and orders. So even if you are a liberal and a hater, you still need to know the laws and orders as well, because if you ever want to be taken serious again, you better stop your cussing, your fussing, your griping, and wiping your butt on a Tesla. Has nothing to do with anything. Not a thing to do with it. You need to know the laws and orders as well, because laws and orders are written as neutral as possible. It's like a water trough. Not all horses get along. Not all animals get along. The water trough is neutral. The water trough don't know it's a water trough. It's a trough because it's the place of water, a resource for H2O. And if you have two horses that don't like each other, that's still the neutral basis. So you either figure out, okay, I can't go at the same time that they're there, whatnot, or you go, you know what, I can come to the trough with you and go, look, I don't like this for this reason, and you don't like it for this reason. So then what? What do? We have a cordial conversation to go, okay, well, is this a local thing? Is it a state thing? Is it federal? All right? Real simple. And our founders, this ain't rocket science. We shouldn't even have to quote our founders on this. It should be majority rule. Going, okay, majority of the people voted this way. If you're in this little part down here, then we will work with you somehow. But this is how we feel, and we will work with you. But you in this category, you can't be all hell-bent against them either. All right, we have to find a neutral zone. So that's where so many people right now are trying to build a bear, grab a straw. My inbox has been full of, oh, why don't you talk about Israel being involved with the JFK? So you're saying because Israel, some few bad actors were involved with Israel 60-something years ago, all of Israel and all Israelis are bad? See, there's people out there just like that who think like that. They think because Israel, some few bad actors were involved 60-something years ago that all of Israel's bad. You have a closed mind if you think that. And you're not wrong from the standpoint of argumentative, but you're wrong from the basis of, so if one bad person does something from a country, all of that country's bad? Like, if you think that way, you have a problem. You have an attitude adjustment you need to make somehow to go, you know what? So there's so much things in my inbox that shows that people need to take a chill pill. All right? Remove your emotions, remove your feelings, divorce those, and go straight to the facts. All right? People are going to think differently than you. And just because they think differently than you, don't mean they're evil or they're bad or they're some, criminal or nothing like that. Just because they think differently than you. The Constitution was written to have a little leeway there because it's got to fit a massive group of people. But then you got to understand why they set it up the way they set it up. The three branches of government. What does the legislative branch do? What's the executive branch do? What's the judicial branch do? How do they function and operate? All right, and it's all on the federal. All right, then it works its way down all the way to local. So you want to know what's going on, you got to remove your emotions. You got to divorce your emotions and put aside your foundational beliefs, whether you're a Christian and you don't believe in this, and if you're a Christian and you don't believe in that. Put those aside. Laws and orders of what's going on right now. When President Trump wakes up, he don't think, oh, well, the Christians ain't going to like what I say today. If it's got to be said, it has to be said. If it's got to be done, it has to be done. All right, some things are not fun, but look where we got. Went a long train of abuses and usurpations. That's what we've been through. So some things are uncomfortable because the people, our ancestors, in the majority, let it get that way. So we are where we are. Somebody had to draw a line in the sand. So it goes back to what I said. I'm going to start carrying a blank piece of paper around, actually 5 pieces of paper, full college rule, and I'm going to slap it down in front of everybody who has an attitude with me and say, I want you to tell me 5 pages, detail how you would have commanded all of this. How would you have cleaned out the federal government, all departments, agencies, etc.? How would you have combated opioids crisis, fentanyl, and illicit drugs? Also, how would you have launched a combative on all forms of trafficking? All right. I want you to tell me how you would have ended all the things going on in Yemen, Syria, Israel, Iran, etc. All right. And then I want you to tell me how you were going to take back certain things that were ours. All right. That belonged to us. We did. We have the right to that. Also, I want you to reset the currencies because that was also part of it. Social Security, all the other things. I want you to show me a full 5-page blueprint of what you would have done differently because you know better than President Trump. What would you have done differently? And 5 pages without starting a civil war, without even having a civil disturbance, and also a world war. What would you have done? Because some of you out there are so holier than thou that let's have it. You're the commander now. What would you have done? Because nobody did anything all these years. Nobody stood up. There's a few of you out there listening. So sometimes this applies to certain people listening and sometimes it applies to others. There's some of you out there who've been fighting just like me, trying to reinstill the Constitution, what it means by the origin of it, the Declaration, what it means by the origin of it. Some of you have, no doubt. But there's a whopping majority out there that have not. They can't even name the three branches of government, but they want to argue, fuss, and bicker with you and I, and can't even name the three branches of government. These people are Constitution in name only. They only know the word Constitution. You don't ever hear a Democrat or a liberal mention the terms Declaration of Independence, ever. They never quote from it. They never talk about it. They never include that when they say anything about, oh, our Constitution. Our Constitution is not the term they want to be quoting from. I can assure you that. If they want to have any basis to stand on, they should be actually using the Declaration of Independence. Even if they butcher it and annihilate it, they should be using it. The Constitution wasn't written for you and I. The Constitution was put together for us to govern our representatives. That was to keep our representatives in check and say, hey, you're not doing this. Why didn't you do this? You didn't write this bill and write this law for us. You wrote it for yourself. Why'd you do that? We want that abolished. That's how atrocious the liberals look right now when they say, oh, Donald Trump is a threat to the Constitution. You probably should be using the term Declaration of Independence, not the Constitution. Because he's gone to the T of the Constitution. To the T. They don't know anything about the Constitution. So see, how can you hold anyone accountable if you don't know it yourself? Will it come easy? It depends on what kind of learner you are. But you still need to know a little bit of it. Even if you can't quote it, if someone like me said, well, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1 says this, yeah, that's right, correct. But we have people who want to call themselves Republicans, conservative, patriots, and they don't know anything about it either. The way you tell rhinos apart right now is the same thing. Rhinos are right now, if they say anything like this, if you hear this on social media, you know they're a rhino. There's a certain person out there right now saying, oh, if Donald Trump, if you do this with the King of England, blah, 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 then that means we're going to have another 1776. If you knew what was going on with laws and orders currently in vote, all public, then you wouldn't be saying that, right? So if you hear someone out there saying, oh, President Trump, I hope he knows about this. I have it all the time in my inboxes. Oh, President Trump's under threat. Oh, gosh, make sure he's protected. This would be a perfect time for my screen to freeze. Like, are you serious right now? Do you not think that President Trump, after all you've seen, do you not think that he has an inclination of what's going on right now? I mean, that's the stuff that baffles me. Oh, so-and-so is going, the world's falling on me. President Trump is the face of an operation, of a biblical, monumental, historical operation. This is a strategic plan. I don't know how many times I got to show this over and over again. There's some people who have never seen this. 45-47. I didn't put that there. I didn't put this here. I didn't go to President Trump and say, hey, I got a great marketing idea. It'll sell some shirts, you know. Put a dash right here. He put that there. April the 2nd, 2023. You know what he's been saying lately about April the 2nd? This April the 2nd? It's a key date. He put that there. I didn't put that there. So, way back in 2023, the question was President Trump versus Joe Biden, quote unquote. Y'all know that's watch me. Quote unquote Joe, if you're new, quote unquote Joe means Joe is not real. He was an actor. It's a World War II history repeat. All right, it's already been done before in history. It may be far-fetched to you if you've never heard any of this, but just because it's far-fetched to you doesn't mean it's never happened and it doesn't exist. It has most certainly happened in history. All right, it's a great tactic. It's an awesome tactic, and it's working perfectly. All right, but this right here, President Trump did that. And the key question of that era would be if President Trump takes over at his age, January the 20th, 2025, or if Joe would have taken over even though you and I, most of the people that follow me know he ain't real, but we're going to go for the neutral seat for the newbies or the normies out there, the average folks that don't know this yet. But if he took over at 82 years old, would they have the cognitive abilities to lead this nation? I am pretty sure that if you mess up on one little thing of punctuation and you're saying on your ball cap on April the 2nd, 2023, which is a year and 7 months before November the 5th, 2024, I'm pretty sure that that would be a cognitive problem. That would be something you can be like, whoa, yeah, that should be a little comma or a little and symbol. He's saying I'm 45, 46, and 47 a year and 7 months before that date of which established that. And he's validated me 100 million times to Pluto and back. For those who have read and studied laws and orders currently invoked. I've been validated over and over and over again. But the problem we have is because people want to be spoon-fed. You want to be spoon-fed and you want someone way up here to go, Derek Jonhson is 1,000% correct. That still want to be spoon-fed when you could be 1,000% correct with laws and orders currently invoked. What else is his role and duty? If you believe he's enforcing the laws and orders right now, then you got to believe in all laws and orders. All right? Then you go and you listen to a guy who can tell you, hey, look, you might have thought that Joe was real, but guess what? There's a World War II tactic that was used years ago that my grandfather taught me about. I learned all about it as a young fella up. All right? World War II tactic. Puppet states. Puppet government. All right? They used two different presidents in certain situations, depending on what it was. This one was slightly different than this one. But it should be because the variables are different. The outcomes are going to be different. The operation is different. The missions are different. But it doesn't mean that the tactics can be different. You can use the same tactics in multiple variables. So, what are you watching? We got to go back to when President Trump, January the 20th, 2017. Before he took that oath, you got to look at the bigger timeline of things. This is where people get guilty. You want to pick it up one day, put it down the next. Pick it up one day, put it down the next. You're a dime store politician. You want to pick it? Here's one article. No. I only use articles to prove the laws and orders. See, that's the difference. My foundation are the laws and orders, current and invoked. I'll pull an article out there on CNN or AP News or wherever and say, here's the laws and orders that that's talking about right here. I don't use news just because, it's news. I show you the stuff that shows you your validity, that will validate you if you're reading and studying. So you got to look at the big blueprint. And the big blueprint is when President Trump rolled down the escalator. And then 4 days before that escalator ride, guess what was put out? A new law of war manual. All right? Very important. June the 12th, 2015. New law of war manual. He rolls down the escalator June 16th, 2015 to announce his presidency. All right? Fast forward. Get into 2016 year. What is the Supreme Court doing out of nowhere, clarifying that military laws and courts are separate than federal laws and courts? May 2016. April 2016, the United States Special Operations Command updated their resistance pyramid from 1966 with a brand new pyramid and a brand new publication called Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide. What is the Supreme Court doing the very next month after Special Operations updates their Unconventional Warfare, which talks about what? Government in exile, puppet governments, puppet states. Very next month, the United States Supreme Court clarifies in the Military Justice Act of 2016 But it wasn't passed. It didn't put into the Defense Production Act, the Defense Authorization, the Defense Authorization Act, which is the defense budget. That's what I was getting at. It wasn't put there until President Trump had become president. The funding. Well, the reason why that matters is because it said military courts. Military courts would be courts martials and also Guantanamo Bay type courts, tribunals, etc. That's why that's important. So you do your math. April 2016, well, you really go back again. June 12, 2015, Law of War Manual. President Trump rolls down the escalator. Then you get up to April 2016, Unconventional Warfare, Pocket Guide, a new resistance pyramid. Very key. May 2016, President Trump. That's his whole basis of what he's standing on. Laws and orders. Supreme Court clarifies. The presidential race of November 2016. I put the picture out. You know, someone else could have taken it that night as well. It was 4:56 a.m. Central Standard Time. I took a photo of him and Putin side by side on the news after he won. Said, ready for reset. The word reset was in single quotations, which means focus on this word, reset. Reset. Resetting what? Fast forward, January the 20th, 2017. Right when President Trump said we're taking the power out of D.C. and giving it back to you, the people, military walked down behind him. They were wearing headbands. Very key. In Sydney in the military is a big deal. Judge Advocate Generals, military intelligence, standing right beside and behind President Trump. Very key. Those two in Sydney are for everybody to see on purpose. Judge Advocate General, who judges all of the things in court. JAG does, military courts. Who gathers the intelligence? Military intel. It's all there. Then President Trump started these things called capitulations. He went to all these different nations, and all these nations capitulated to him. I probably don't need to name any of those nations because I want to keep my internet up. But all these different nations capitulated. He left certain ones standing on stage looking around. He did things that were unconventional. All the media said, oh, he don't know etiquette. He's uncouth and he's all these things. And look at him. He looks like a baboon and blah, 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 blah. They annihilated him. But that was also on purpose as well. Because you got to go read the resistance pyramid. You got to go read it. Now I'm going to go backwards here. I was going to read this later, but I'm going to read it right now because it fits in what I'm talking about. Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide. Immediately under the terms shadow government and government in exile, it talks about figure 2. Figure 2 is the pyramid of resistance. All right. It was used in the 60s and now it's being used again. Now listen what it says. Figure 2 below depicts the typical activities conducted by an insurgency or resistance movement. Most or all of the represented activities will be conducted by a successful resistance or insurgency, regardless of whether the United States government makes the policy decision to support it. Now watch this. Listen carefully. Don't just be the commenter in the comment box. Listen carefully what accompanies behind that. United States government support to resistance, known as unconventional warfare, is initiated by either a presidential finding or an exord. Unconventional warfare, so an exord, executive order. Unconventional warfare proceeds generally following a 7-phase conceptual model called the 7 phases of unconventional warfare. And then the next page is your pyramid. Unconventional warfare is a movement, it's a resistance movement to basically overthrow a government or an occupying power. That's exactly what the definition is. So, listen to this again. Most or all of representative activities will be conducted by a successful resistance or insurgency, regardless of whether the United States government makes the policy decision to support it. That right there is clarifying what the Military Justice Act of 2016 did. It separated military laws and military courts from federal laws and federal courts. Well, guess what that means? It means what all of us veterans have always known. If you're a veteran who went in the military for the right reasons, you know military is separate from the federal government. There's only 4 ways they pair. Executive orders, what it says here, national emergencies, proclamations, and treaties. And it's telling you right here in unconventional warfare, which in unconventional warfare, again, is to overthrow a government or an occupying power. So we're going to come back to this again. Because you witnessed President Trump go on capitulations, 2017 to 2020. Those were not just normal meetings with nations like other presidents have done. No way, Jose. Because the laws and the orders in place prove that. So watch this. There was an article recently, this week, that I showed everybody on my platforms. I said, here's an article. And it's saying specifically, it was really just a few days ago. And it said specifically that President Trump invoked wartime orders. They've already been invoked, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you got to know where the wartime order is. And you're going to hear me. You know it. Everybody in the comment box, what am I going to say? Like a broken record. Which one is it? December the 20th, 2019. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 is that order. Title 50 is War and National Defense Booklet. Chapter 33 is the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973. The War Powers. Section 1550 was not in there until Congress put it there December the 20th, 2019. And it's very clear on what's to take place in the clause of it. All right, it specifically says in the first 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter, the President should report to the Congress the use of military forces and joint partner forces of our regular and irregular forces. Irregular, that one key word, irregular ties in your unconventional warfare. That's your irregular warfare. That's your Title 50. That's your clandestine operations. That's your covert operations. That's the operations underground that you, the people, wouldn't know about unless you know someone like me. Now, I don't tell any of the missions and what they're doing exactly, where they are, when they are, but show you the 40,000-foot airplane view. This is what's taking place right now, currently, invoked. All right, and then when I show you the aircraft, well, if they're showing it on public radar, you can know about it as well. And you can kind of guess by someone like me, if it's a C-130, if it's a C-17, whatever, I can kind of guess without telling you anything. Right? Specific. That would be detrimental to the mission of our boys and girls in uniform. All right? So the first 180 days, let's just break it down. We'll do a quick one on this podcast tonight. But the first 180 days, after that, December the 20th, 2019, you could go with, we'll just go with the March 13th verbal national emergency by President Trump. Verbal, not in an order. Verbal. March 23rd, the mainstream media told you that President Trump was going to install a general just in case the law breaks down. That's not correct terminology, ladies and gentlemen. That also shows you, with mainstream media saying that, it's also part of the plan to show you that, hey, what you're watching has all been planned, because that's not the correct terminology. All right. You don't install a general. All right. It'd be an order from the president as a commander-in-chief to go to the commanding general. Boom. Hey, this is what we're doing. You do this, that. It ain't called installing a general. The general's already there. General is already in service. He don't have to be installed. He's already in service for a reason. It's that simple. You don't install a general. All right, so that. Guess who that general was? The general of the Northern Command. Well, guess what President Trump just invoked a few days ago in the grand scheme, January the 20th, 2025, in what people think of the new term. He told his general of the Northern Command, I want to implementation of level 3 planning for the southern border. All right, so there's that same general. Same general. So if you believe in one order, you got to believe in all of them, because they don't change like that. These didn't expire. They have not been revoked. They have not been rescinded. They have not been terminated. They're still active. That's how the laws and orders work. So the first 180 days. So you have March 13th verbal. You had the March 23rd. March 27th, President Trump in executive order. What did this just say? Initiated by either a presidential finding or an executive order. Executive Order 13912. He federalized 1 million reserve components to active duty. Reserve only serve one mission, ladies and gentlemen. Federal only. They're not like the National Guard who do state and federal. Reserves are federal only, meaning a presidential order by Title 10. They don't operate under Title 32. That's the National Guard. Reserve components are presidential order, federal order, Title 10. In Executive Order 13912, Title 10, Section 12302 was invoked. 1 million reserve components. Then, you fast forward to April the 1st. April Fool's Day, but no April Fools with this one. President Trump, Executive Order 13773, which is on the Department of Justice in their About section for all the counter-narcotics operations. That's used as the example because that's the most recent executive order for it. They launched, the Southern Command, with 22 joint partners, El Salvador included, the Netherlands included, Colombia included. You'll know why I'm talking about them. Our 22 joint partners launched a counter-narcotics operation. It's still ongoing. I show you those aircraft. I'm going to show you some tonight when I get done. I'm going to post some that we're flying today. They're still in those operations from way back there. All right, and there's an article today that talks about one of the ships, the naval ships, is under Northern Command but might bounce back to Southern Command for the counter-narcotics operation. It's still ongoing. Those orders are still in place. They were not revoked. That's why this is key to listen to. April the 1st. All right. Then you had April the 30th. President Trump with Executive Order 13919. He directed the Secretary of Defense Equal Authority to federalize the selective reserves to active duty. All right. Invoking Title 10, Section 12304. Then you had July 1st. He ended NAFTA and established the United States, Mexico, and Canadian agreement. Very important. All right. Those aircraft have been in and out of our nation. So what you think you see with Canada and all this other stuff, it's all distraction. Because the aircraft prove who's doing what and what they're doing and who's allies and who's not. All right. So that was July the 1st. August 28, 2020 is exactly 180 business days from December the 20th, 2019. Guess what was put out? A congressional report. Guess what the clause says in December the 20th, 2019? A congressional report. The president is to report to Congress the use of the military for defense committees to put a report out. Guess what was put out exactly 180 business days from December the 20th, 2019 to August 28, 2020. A report by Congress. Guess what it's titled? The Military Justice Act of 2016. On August 28, 2020, you want to tell me that's a coincidence? I don't think so. That's how it all works. Now, the second 180 days, you had President Trump signing the Abraham Accords, peace in the Middle East. All right. Then you saw all the other nations get involved with Israel. All of Israel, what's going on, are in Army publications way back in 2019. To a T, how much they're spending and where they're going to be. The operations. And it's happening right now. Still happening. All right. Some aircraft that I caught earlier is going to prove, again, validity all day long. All right. From what was put in here way back here, way back. 2019. 2018 is when they started talking about it in mainstream articles. So all adds up. You got to know military laws, military orders. All right. So, September the 15th, that was the Abraham Accords. November the 12th, 2020, Executive Order 13959 with a national emergency. President Trump declared that's the very order that froze all of the assets of all individuals and organizations illegally funding the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist military. That's a big one because it had 2,500 tabs alone of names frozen. All right. Now, December the 7th, 2020, big day. President Trump, Executive Order 13961, Federal Mission Resilience Strategy. That's the very executive order that invoked a continuity of government and a continuity of operations within the executive branch on December the 7th, 2020. December the 10th, 2020, President Trump signed a new order of succession within the Department of Defense. It's the most recent order of succession being used in all of our Department of Defense directives right now. So why would Joe, if Joe was real, he would have had every authority as every other president. He'd have had the same power as every other president. Why would Joe revoke Executive Order 13961, the continuity of operations and continuity of government, on January the 19th, 2025, which would be the last full day of any presidency? Why would he revoke that? If there wasn't a continuity of government, then Joe would have revoked that January the 20th, 2021, had he been real, had he been president. Because if President Trump is a threat to democracy and a threat to the Constitution, and he's violating all the laws and orders, then why would they let an executive order run all the way to the last day of Joe's presidency? You cannot revoke something that has not been invoked. Real simple. Now, the presidential authority that you see right here in unconventional warfare, where it says right there, initiated by either a presidential finding or an executive order. Well, you've already heard the executive orders. You've already heard the findings. This is where you make it applicable. Executive orders must be revoked. If they're not revoked, they're still active. And a president can enforce them. Now, in your lifetime, everybody who's living, if you're over 35 years old, you've never seen anything. You've never seen it. You've never seen, all you've seen is they did just enough to get by. They Hansel and Gretel the American people. They did just enough to get by, but they padded their pocketbooks. Right? You've never seen laws and orders enforced like you've seen now. That's why people are kicking and screaming on the other side, because, and a lot of them don't even know what's going on. So there's that. That's straight out the gate. All right. But presidential finding and executive order. All President Trump would have had to done is tell the liberals, even though this is an operation, but for you out there that don't know that, all he would have had to done is say, hey, if you don't like the laws and orders being invoked, then why didn't you revoke them? Why are they still on paper? So they're still on paper. I can enforce them. Real simple. So that's why they didn't say you can't do that. That's why they started all the lawfare, even though I know that's still part of plan. All right, so his presidential authority comes with this. You'll hear people out there, I've heard them say it before. They'll say, oh, that Derek Jonhson don't know what he's talking about. A president cannot serve beyond his term. Yeah, he can. He actually can. That's where they don't know what they're talking about. So how do you solve that, ladies and gentlemen? You go to where it says he can. It ain't this. It ain't, oh, yes, he can. No, he can't. Yes, he can. No, he can't. It's going in where they put it in law and go, well, guess what? If you don't like the law, why is it still in law? Why didn't the Democrats revoke these powers that a president can expand his powers? Why didn't they say, we don't like that option there. Let's rewrite something and or abolish that? How come they didn't do that? Because the reason why President Trump quotes Eisenhower so much, because Eisenhower established Presidential Emergency Action Documents, PEDS. Presidential Emergency Action Documents. Guess what they accompany? They accompany a continuity of government. Well, guess what Executive Order 13961 was? A continuity of government for the executive branch, the one that Joe revoked on his last full day of presidency. So that tells you there was a continuity of government invoked. You really don't. I really wouldn't have to go any further with that if people knew what was going on. But the average person out there don't know anything about laws and orders. They don't know it. And you should want to know. Especially if you love President Trump. Especially if you love this nation. Because what you're watching is so biblical, monumental, and historical. And it validates world history. History repeat. Alright? He most certainly can expand his powers. Alright? Presidential emergency action documents. Those are draft classified, which means that Department of Justice and all these other departments know what's going on. They're not Googleable. You're not going to find those. But here's how you prove that's been done. President Trump told you about a week ago. He said, I've signed over 400 executive actions since January the 20th, 25. If you go to the federalregister.gov, there's only 138 accounted for. Where are the others? Those will be in PEDS, Presidential Emergency Action Documents. All right. And PEDS they're not going to be partisan. They're going to be bipartisan. All right. So that's the other thing. There is going to be a revelation of all this for history's sake. So that's where people need to calm down, enjoy the ride. If you're whatever age you are, you're going to live through it. If God allows you to live 30 years over the age you are right now, you're going to live through it all and get to see revelations like nobody's business. Probably before then, but I'm being conservative just because this stuff had to roll out a certain way. You've got to be patient. You can't be all demanding when you weren't fighting any of this time period. You can't be all demanding. You can't be all fight right now and jump on board and going, I'm with you, and demand something that you ain't been fighting for a long time. It had to play out a certain way. So then you'll hear people out there say that, oh, the president, the military can't operate with civilian and law enforcement. Yes, they can. There is another thing right there, again, that people out there have no clue what they're talking about. And if they didn't want it there, then why didn't they abolish it again? Why didn't they rewrite this? But the military most certainly can work with law enforcement. Most certainly can. It's called Civil and Military Operations Joint Publication 3-57. And I'm going to read a little bit to you. Per the Posse Comitatus Act and Department of Defense regulations, the United States is generally prohibited from employing Title 10, United States Code, Department of Defense Forces, to provide direct military involvement to enforce the law of the United States unless expressly authorized by the what? Constitution or Congress. Real simple. Per the Posse Comitatus Act, it's saying that normally with the Posse Comitatus Act and the Department of Defense regulations, you don't want a president just to invoke Title 10 just because he can. No. But when there's a presidential finding, like the unconventional warfare talks about, through executive orders, when there's that, and that means a bunch of people back here are also on board with that, it's bipartisan, all walks of life, all world leaders, not just U.S. leaders, world leaders involved with this. When it's bipartisan like that, normally you don't want to, but you can. All right, when there's a presidential finding or executive order. It says unless authorized. Well, guess who authorized that? This is why they're also showing you a history repeat, and they're teaching you history. They're teaching all Americans history. It's up to Americans to read, study, and apply. So Article 1 of the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, Article 1 is what allowed that general of the Northern Command way back in March 2020. That's when they started, the mainstream media started talking about the termination, quote unquote, of the Constitution. Wrong terminology. It's the suspension of the Constitution. It's in what, ladies and gentlemen? Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution. So when you hear a liberal out there kicking, whining, fussing, screaming, and even rhinos out there, they know nothing about the Constitution, because guess what that is titled? The writ of habeas corpus. It's nicknamed the suspension clause. But guess who suspends the Constitution? It's not the president. Article 1 of the Constitution is the legislative branch. That would be your Congress. So Congress suspended the Constitution. So that's how atrocious all the liberals look. They should be mad at the Congress for suspending the Constitution in 2020. And guess what was back then? There was a lot more liberal and Democrat Congress than there were Republican. So they should be mad at that. But guess what? It's an operation. So see, that's why liberals, if any liberal out there has a brain, or any Democrat out there has a brain, and you're just fussing just to fuss, but you have a brain, you need to shut up. You already look atrocious. But this is where you need to see that, hey, it was the Congress who suspended the Constitution. Because that's Article 1. That's the legislative branch. All right? They did that. All right? It's a rebellion or invasion of public safety. That if there's an invasion, so public safety. So when the president declares a national emergency, it unlocks 150 statutory powers. 150. There were 41 national emergencies open since 1979, all the way to just recently. January 20, 2025. Now there's a few more added to it now. So I can make a case that every president since Jimmy Carter was a wartime president. And also the Department of Defense and also military scholars as well claim and believe as well, like I believe, that the justice, so the powers, the War Powers Act of 73, the Resolution Act as they call it now, was a suppression of the president. But this is where, again, you got to listen. This is so awesome. This is where Congress jacked up. This is also where politicians got so confident and comfy in their rigmarole, in their game they were playing with the people, that they didn't abolish this. In 1973, when they amended the 41 and 42 War Powers Act to the 73 resolution, they made it to where a president, even though they were trying to suppress the powers of the president, to not have any access to the armed forces, like the Constitution was left really broad and open, that he's the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy, but Congress has the right to declare the war. Well, they went in and tried to suppress him even more, and they said that he has to declare a national emergency in order to use the armed forces. That's why there's been 41 executive orders with national emergencies open since 1979, and you can make a case that every president since 79 was battling the Congress themselves. No matter what you thought about those presidents, you can make a case for that they were battling themselves against the Congress and a part of this war, the global alliance and the war in the swamp, because that was Congress trying to put suppression on the president's powers. The same thing they did in 1951 when they put term limits on the president, but not themselves. And then in 73, they made it to where a president can only use the armed forces by declaration of a national emergency. And there's been 41 active emergencies since 1979. So listen, Congress left that open. But they never dreamt that there would be someone come in and enforce everything to the T and take it over the right way. See, it's a lawful takeover. Again, because Congress suspended the Constitution. That's Congress's doing. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the Constitution. There was an invasion. So COVID was a biological chemical weapon used against the people. Retaliation by the deep state. Then you also have the border. The border is Article 2 of the Constitution. That's the president's main role and duty is Article 2. You heard President Trump recently say this. He said, you don't need a bill for the border. What did I keep screaming 2023 and 2024? I'm like, you don't need a bill for the border. Article 2, if the border's that bad to where you can't take time to get a bill, the only reason you need a bill is for funding. To pay like border security, more border patrol. That's the only reason you need a bill is for funding. To do it lawfully for funding. That's it. But If it was so bad that your lives were being jeopardy and your lives were everywhere, so Texas, anywhere, southern New Mexico, also Arizona and California, if it was that bad, all the president had to do was get on the phone and say, hey, Article 2, baby, shut it down. Shut it down. That's his role and duty. So that's how you know when people are Constitution in name only, is because Article 1 is the legislative branch. Article 2 is your executive branch. So now you can see the joint partnership of the legislative and executive and what's been going on. So you gotta, that's why the subject can't be a dinosaur politician. You gotta study the full blueprint and know this is an ongoing operation. Article 3 of the Constitution is being played out right now as we speak. You heard Tom Homan just this past week say, I don't give a dang what the judges have to say. Well, that tells you right there this. This is very key to listen to. The very first moment that President Trump, his administration, even though I know it's an operation, but for the people who don't know that, the very first moment President Trump takes a shortcut with laws and orders, goes against the law and order, and then tries to justify that law and order by going against it, the very moment one law is shortcutted or going around, it null and voids the whole operation. That's why it had to be done this way, and it had to take time, because you got to do things lawfully through the full extent of the law and due process of the law. So when you hear Tom Homan say, I don't give a dang about what the judges have to say, that tells you presidential emergency action documents are in place that will answer bipartisan, not only U.S. leaders on both sides, but world leaders will exonerate President Trump. He's already told you, I will be exonerated, not acquitted, I will be exonerated, meaning nothing on my record. That tells you you're in a biblical, monumental, historical operation. A lot bigger than just even Doge and just that. We're talking about a global alliance takedown. You've seen the recurrencies, resetting of current, everything. But the one moment that one law has shortcutted and or broken or sliced in half, it's null and void. So if you're a true good person and you are doing things the way they should be done, then we got to do it to the full extent of that. So Tom Homan is clarifying to you, that's validation to you who have been reading and studying what I've put into place, and it ain't about me, but I'm just saying I'm the only one who's put all this together, where you don't have to sit for days on hours on ends and trying to put all this together all in one location. It's only in one location in that book. Those are all a compilation of all your .gov and .mil sites of all the laws and orders in the chronological order. I couldn't put all of it in there because it would be longer than Obamacare's book. You wouldn't read it, right? So it shows you all the little short excerpts of them, and you got to go look them up yourself. But it's most certainly going on. But Tom Homan confirms that. That is validation to you that yes, most certainly there are presidential emergency action documents in place. This is a operation, a strategic operation, special operation, unconventional warfare, clandestine operations, covert operations, irregular warfare. It's all there. But you got to read and study it. You got to want to know that. But it's all public. But it's all over the board. You got to know someone like me who's put it all together. Also, Tom Homan's quote is also clarifying our founding father, James Madison, the father of the Constitution. Marbury versus Madison, 1803. All right, Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration is very important as well. When a long train of abuses and usurpations, it is their right, it is their duty to overthrow such government, to get rid of it. Also, I'm going to quote this right here. All the liberals in the J6, all they do is talk about J6. That's all they know. They don't know anything else. Watch this. Here's another one of our heroes of the time. Marquis de Lafayette famously stated, when the government violates the people's rights, insurrection is, for the people and for each portion of the people, the most sacred of the rights and the most indispensable of duties. Now go back to the Declaration of Independence. I'm going to pull it up here. I'm going to read it real quick, just the part that I think is the most important out of all of it. Let's see. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. You know what Oxford Languages defines to throw off? It means to get rid of it. And it says to lay new foundation. That's what you're watching. That's what you're witnessing. That's why no liberal ever quotes from the Declaration of Independence. They don't know anything about it. Nothing about it. They would not know a wolf in sheep's clothing if it presented themselves as their mother or their child and sat in their living room. That is how ignorant they are. And what they don't realize is guys like me, I don't care how they live their life. I wouldn't let anybody hurt them. All right? But we're saying the federal government got too big. Judicial power got way too big. That's why you're witnessing Article 3 right now and all these judges for this reason. Marbury versus Madison. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, had to go into the United States Supreme Court in 1803. Do your Alabama hillbilly bumpkin math. He wrote the Constitution. The date is September the 17th, 1787. That's 16 years after he wrote the Constitution. He's having to walk into a United States Supreme Court and clarify what a law looked like based off of what the Constitution says. And he's the father of the Constitution. This is why it's important to know your three branches of government and how they were established, who established them, but how they were established, and what they do. The legislative branch, our representatives, and the executive branch, our president and vice president, guess who they are appointed by? They are elected by we, the people. The judicial branch are appointed by the president. It's that simple. So when the judicial branch takes the law into their hands, they're not doing the will of the legislative and executive branch. Therefore, they're not doing the will of the people who elected those representatives who appointed those judges. Those judges can be impeached and their courts can be shut down effective immediately, just like that, by the command of the president. Because he is to do the will of the people. The representatives are to do the will of the people. It's that simple. It is really that simple. You have not seen that for many years because you got to go back to the 1870s when the bar was established, the British Accreditation Registry. And all attorneys had to start going under the bar. And then it just snowball from there. You do the timeline again of everything that I do. You've already heard it. Those of you who've heard me, I start with 1941. You can start with the Reserve, Federal Reserve, 1913. But 1941, 1949, 1951, 1955, 1961, 1963, 1968, 1971, 1991, 2001. You can see the long train of abuses when you hear the breakdown on my other videos of those key dates. All right, so Marbury versus Madison is very important. Chief Justice Marshall knew better. He knew if he didn't rule a certain way that they would abolish the court and start all over again. So guess what was ruled in Marbury versus Madison? A law repugnant to the Constitution is void. So in layman's terms, that means a law, so any statute, a piece of paper, anything that looks like a law, that doesn't back and support the Constitution, null and void. Means nothing. So see, we have to reestablish to even judges and lawyers what the law is supposed to be. Because too many of them took the law in their hands. It can also be said about certain, obviously, law enforcement. We have law enforcement that don't know anything about the laws on paper. They don't know anything about it. They'll pull you over and they'll try to make something up. Now, they got a tough job. There ain't no doubt about it. But we have to reestablish education as a premise in this nation. We have to reestablish that. That's why all these federal departments are being abolished. Because again, there's been too much federalization of things that shouldn't have been there. So the national emergencies, that's why they're important. National emergencies are in Title 50, Chapter 34. Very important. So you're watching the government clean out of the judicial branch as well right now. So any judge that pipes up, now I know that a lot of this is operational. A lot of it's already been done. Now you're seeing the rollout of that. However, moving forward in the future, it ain't to get no lazy boy and get all lazy for the future. We've got to maintain and sustain this on into the future. That's why it's still important that everybody know how the legislative works, executive works, judicial works, the origin of them, when they were founded, how they were founded, who does what, presidential role, vice president, etc. The other thing about unconventional warfare that people need to know about is this, is that if you're getting mad, upset, frustrated, whatever it may be, if you're getting mad, then here's the deal. Some of that is resistance showing that you don't know exactly what you should know. All right, so some people get mad and upset and bitter and frustrated. That's part of waking people up. All right. Also, part of these riots, if you go to the pyramid, the resistance pyramid, a lot of the riots you saw on TV were staged. All right, all staged to wake you up. All right. So some of this stuff is, because most of the liberals are not getting out in the streets. They know we're an armed nation. They're not going to get out in the, they ain't nobody getting out in the Southland. Ain't nobody trying that in a small town. Ain't nobody doing that. So, these liberals, we allow them to bark. But you got to look at this. I'm going to get there in a minute. Well, I'll do this in a minute. I got a great analogy for it. So let's just go over some stuff again for your sake. World War II tactics. So February the 18th, just this February, President Trump was in a press conference. And the reporter asks a question. All right. And she says two different words. One of those, and here, everybody who listens, and there's a few people who do follow me who are capable of watching multiple different platforms. I'm the only person, I hate using the word podcaster because I'm not. I'm a veteran, keeping my oath, the way the Constitution reads, the Declaration, and our foundation. All right. But I don't consider myself a podcaster. God gave me a platform. That's it. All right. But I'm the only person who's talked about puppet states and puppet governments. I'm the only who's talked about it. By those terms, especially. Puppet government, puppet state. My grandfather taught me that. And my grandfather was a World War II veteran. He lied about his age to get in. All right. Great generation of men. The last real great generation of men who were just men, and, they didn't walk around looking for a fight. They didn't look around trying to instigate something. They didn't accuse people of all kinds of stuff. They lived life. All right. This reporter asked President Trump a question, and she uses the terms capitulation and puppet government. Now, like I show people, in your normal casual conversations with your friend and family, how often do you use the terms capitulation, occupied, white flag of surrender, and puppet government, government in exile, shadow government? How often do you just sit around the campfire and go, man, that white flag of surrender was the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life? You don't. You've never done that. None of you. Except for you veterans who knows what's going on when we've talked about it. Other than that, those are not government terms. Those are military terms. Those are law war manual terms. Those are Department of Defense. Those are law war manuals, straight out the law war manual and unconventional warfare. Government in exile, shadow government, unconventional warfare. White flag of surrender, occupied, capitulation, law war manual. So what's President Trump doing dropping that in all his speeches? In every one of his speeches, he says something on those lines. Those are also proclamations. There's no such thing as a midterm rally, ladies and gentlemen. He went on all these speeches during Joe's sitting president. There's rules and regulations to when you can campaign for presidency. February 18th, reporter says capitulation and puppet government. All right, now let's go back and read this again. Most or all of the representative activities will be conducted by a successful resistance or insurgency regardless of whether the United States government makes the policy decision to support it. United States government to support resistance, unconventional warfare, is initiated by either a presidential finding or an executive order. And it goes to this beautiful cup here. Military laws and orders are not conspiracy theories. They're all laws and orders currently invoked. The Trump dance. All right, so watch this. This is when people say, well, why would Donald Trump let the country go to hell? Most people who say that are over 50 years old. I've not met anybody under 50 who said that. And I'm like, okay, you're 50, 60, 70 years old. When was it not in hell? Like, you have never seen a true government operate without shackles and burdens and constraints of inflation, foreign wars, etc. You haven't. Taxes out the yin-yang. Taxes on everything. You haven't. Your gas is not where it could be because we're still reliant on foreign oil, not our own. So everything we have is all constrained and shackled by whom? Bureaucrats. You've never seen anything the way it should be. You've seen a president go in 4 years, the first 2 years, abolishing what the last president did. The last 2 years setting up to set up the next bullcrap game they play with you, the people. You've never seen what a president's supposed to do. We, the people, are supposed to have a president who represents the will of the majority of the people and roll right into the net. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's the way it should be. So see, we let all this transgender and homosexuality, sexual anything, we let all this stuff get in the federal government. Has nothing to do with the federal government whatsoever. Not a thing. Has nothing to do with law enforcement. None of this stuff. Again. So it goes back to when President Trump talks about eliminating the Department of Education. The Department of Education starts in your household. That's where it starts. It should be nobody else telling you how to run your household. You should be doing enough as a human being, a decent human being, that however you want to believe that way, without hurting or harming somebody. That's it. It is that freaking simple. Look what they've done. Now you can't catch, you catch too many fish out of a dang ocean or a river. Oh, you caught 52 fish, the regulation's 51. And they'll write you a $400 ticket for it or something crazy like that. That is the most absurd crap. Now, I believe in conservation. I do. At the same time, though, look at what we've given the power to out there. We've given power, seatbelt, wearing a seatbelt or not. Well, if you don't wear your seatbelt, my seatbelt won't work. It's the same thing with the whole vaccine and all that stuff. If you want to take them, hey, do your thing, boo-boo. It's your world, and you're living in it. I'm in it too. But if you don't take your vaccine, then it's kind of like going back to, if you don't take your vitamins, then my vitamins won't work. So when you're telling me I got to take a vaccine because you took one, did you take your vitamins this morning? Because if you didn't take yours, mine won't work. And by the way, get in your vehicle, buckle your seatbelt, because if your seatbelt on, mine won't work either. All this bullcrap got in society. All this stuff. Because guess what? Incompetent bureaucrats could not create wealth. They had to create taxes. They had to create fines. They had to create stuff that is absurd. If you want to get in your vehicle and ride down the road without a seatbelt on, you should be able to do that, no matter what someone says or thinks. Who cares? Some people live without their seatbelt on. Some people don't. We got too stupid as a society. We got too Build-A-Bear, too cookie cut. Everything's just grab a straw here, grab a straw here. Nobody has a foundation. And we're all the ones funding it and paying for it. So what's beautiful about this is you put President Trump in 4 years. It goes back to that piece of paper. Do you want the 5-page blank piece of paper and tell me how you do it? Or do you want to see how they've done it? Because it's beautiful how they've done it. It's all lawful. It's all military. But you put him in 4 years. You enforce the laws. 95% of the battle that you'll read in this book right here, part 2, 95% of the battle, enforcing the laws. Real simple. The other 5%, funneling evil into a trap. Funnel them. Letting them raise the white flag along the way. It's a lot better whenever you don't tell on someone or tattle on someone or gossip on someone. It's a lot better to just let it go. And let that person face whatever it is on their own. When you tattle on someone, or you tell on someone, or you gossip on someone, you ain't doing nothing but adding to drama, and you're just being a Miss Daisy or whatever it is. They enforce the laws and they set a parameter. And it's funneled all these people because of this. Every single one of you listening, you've never seen the laws and orders enforced like they've been enforced. And everything President Trump did in the first 4 years proved all these years what he did in 1 day, what he does in 2 days, what he does in 3 days. He's proven every single thing that career politicians and bureaucrats said could not be done, he's proven it can be done. And it has been done. But they had to show you that. They had to give you a sample of that and then let it go back to what they used to do, where it was the political game, where it's like, oh man, we got this milk and honey, and then boom, right back to corruption. You had to see that it could be done, and then they put back in the puppet, World War II puppet state. They put that back in. That's why President Trump said all he had to do is leave it alone. They kept showing you all along the way. It's all a revelation for you, the people, we, the people, to do what? Start re-educating yourself. Start putting priorities back in place. Stop fishing for the weekend and read some laws and orders. Don't go play golf one weekend. Read some laws and orders. Don't go do this. Read some laws and orders. Put your cell phone down. Read some laws and orders. Reinstill priorities. Reinstill values. Reinstill the operation that's going on. Get plugged in. You may not like laws and orders. You may be someone who prefers something else in a part of this. Get plugged in. Somehow. Make yourself accessible. Get plugged in somehow, some way. So you put him in 4 years. Enforce all the laws and orders. Invoke everything possible lawfully. Start the operation. Then you pull him back with presidential emergency action documents, which are lawful. All right, which will allow him to have 12 years versus 8 straight out the gate. All right, because everything had to be done lawfully again. So if they'd have done 8 straight out the gate, it'd have been a lot more rapid fire and it'd have been a lot more chaos and pandemonium versus letting it breathe a little bit. So you do what? 4 years, invoke the laws and orders. Then in the 4th year, you go, all right, invoking this, expanding it out. You pull him back here. He's still operating. Military's doing what they need to be doing. And they heavily started on combating the opioids crisis and fentanyl and your drug trafficking, your child trafficking, your sex trafficking, human trafficking, all that. They started that. Those operations ongoing. Israel was ongoing. All these other things ongoing. And you clean it up the way it needs to be clean. All right. And then you put him back in visually, lawfully. Everything's done lawful. So you get 12 years. What would have taken 8? It's a real genius idea. It's all lawful again. And somebody had to do it. Something had to do it. Somebody had to say enough's enough, line in the sand. So all of you complaining, griping, whining, fussing, all you're doing is proving exactly that. There's a quote out there that says, you will never be criticized more than someone doing more than you. It's always someone doing less. So if you got time to whine, complain, gripe, fuss, kick, cuss, all this other stuff, gossip, drama, instigate stuff, bait stuff, trying to look for a fight, trying to set someone up, trying to frame people and all. If you got time to do all that, you ain't doing what you're supposed to be doing. What's my saying? It's plain and simple. That is plain and simple. So President Trump has validated October, November, heavily speeches talking about occupied territory. He said we're an occupied country. We'll be an occupied country soon, no longer. He talks backwards like that, so you got to catch it. He could have said pretty soon we won't be an occupied country, but he said it backwards, so it does. It trips people up. He said we will be an occupied country soon, no longer. So you got to listen. Got to pay attention. He said this October and November 2024. Well, occupied territory, ladies and gentlemen, that's in the Law of War Manual. It means nowhere else. It applies to nothing else. The average person just sitting there listening, they don't apply to them. Like if they don't know laws and orders, it don't apply. They don't even know what that means. Most of them didn't even hear it in the first place. They're too busy going, yeah, drain that swamp, Trump 45, 47, yeah, 47. They didn't even hear any of that. They don't even hear anything what he's saying in the first place because they're just, oh, that's my man right there. Oh, yeah, Trump. Hey, wave to me. Don't even listen to his speeches. So no wonder we look atrocious. So April the 2nd, quote, so we're just a few days away from April the 2nd. Very close. April the 2nd, President Trump said vast wealth will come back to our nation. Vast wealth. Everybody thinks of the tariffs and stuff. Vast wealth. All right, there's an April the 2nd correlation. This was put there April the 2nd, 2023. Very key. That's validation. He's telling you that April the 2nd, 2025 is going to be vast wealth to our nation. Why did he put it on that date? Right here. All right. And then also April the 2nd, 1792. Wow, that's a year after the Bill of Rights. December the 15th, it's not even a year actually. December the 15th, 1791 with the Bill of Rights. And then April the 2nd, 1792, watch this. So this one was awesome when I shared it with my group and different people on my team. When you go to January 1st, 2021. Now in my book it says January the 15th because that's a date that they did show online. But January the 1st, the publication, also either date really doesn't matter. It's still happening 2025. But January the 1st, publication. FEMA. So there's Federal Continuity Directives 1 and Federal Continuity Directive 2. The first one was January the 17th, 2017, 3 days before President Trump took his first oath. And then June 13th, 2017, all right, Federal Continuity Directive 2. Under those, there's a series of continuity directives. Different kinds, different names. All right. President Trump's Executive Order 13961, in that second 180 days, under Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, that invoking of the continuity of government, continuity of operations, that, we'll do your math. December the 7th, 2020, it's not long before January the 1st, 2025. This continuity directive was put out, called the Reconstitution of the Executive Branch. Reconstitution of the Executive Branch. 2.3, Section 2.3 of this continuity plan And it reads this way. When a new seat of government cannot be established in Washington, D.C., Congress and their enumerated powers will get with the states to set up a new seat of government. Wow. What a punch that is. Now you go over to April 2nd, 1792, the Coin Act. That's when they established silver as the lawful tender in the United States. Guess what it's called? The seat of government. It's all there, baby. It's all there. That's why the liberals only hang on January 6th. January 6th was also part of the operation. They showed you Congress breaking 18 United States Code, federal crimes. 18 United States Code is Title 18, federal crimes and criminal procedures. They showed you the breaking of that. Title 18, Section 2381, 2384, 2385, 3 United States Code, Section 15, and also 52 United States Code, Section 20511. They showed you they broke that right in front of everybody on purpose. So you're a jury, you witnessed it. Whether you knew what you were watching or not, that's what you witnessed that day. So, getting into one step further. So, January the 20th, 2021. That's why it's so important. So important, the cannons. There were 3 cannons shown. The only cannons shown all day long for Joe Biden were 3 cannons at Arlington. Guess what that was still in? So it's the second 180 days after December the 20th, 2019. February the 24th, 2021 will be 180 business days after August 28th, 2020. So January the 20th, 2021. It was the first time all 50 states National Guard were in one location at one time, including Guam and Puerto Rico. First time ever. 35,000 plus troops. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you what right now. I love my Army. I love my Army. I do. But I always brag on the United States Marine Corps for one reason. 12 out of their 14 weeks of basic training, they beat the living crap out of each other. That's what they do. And they pride themselves on it. And they should. They're tough. Women, Marine Corps girls, can whoop a lot of dudes' rear ends in this nation. I'm going to tell you, I firsthand, I sparred with a Marine Corps friend of mine in Texas. And she kicked me right here. Took my breath. Went right to the ground. All right. They're bad. They bad. Marine Corps bad. They good. They're good kind of bad, but they bad. All right. It would take 5,000 Marine Corps in most cities in this nation to go in and wipe them clean. I would probably argue lower than that, but just on a fun measure, you take 5,000 Marine Corps in Chicago, New York, anywhere, set them free and say clean it up. MS-13, they lucky they got rounded up the way they did. All right, because it could have been a whole different ball game. But they chose the way they did it, and they did it lawfully, and they did it peacefully. All right, without having to do certain things. So when you got 35,000 National Guard for an inauguration, if you want to sit there and argue with a veteran about 35,000 National Guard needed for what? What would they be needed for? If there was ever going to be any kind of craziness going on, especially with the South and the North, if you want to go back to old days, which weren't terribly long ago, it would have been with Obama as president. It wouldn't have been, or becoming president, it wouldn't have been an old white man, not another old white man. If Joe Biden was really president, which he wasn't by laws and orders, but it wouldn't have been another old white man. 35,000 troops. But then they stayed all the way to March 2021. Why? If they were there for an inauguration, Why did the National Guard stay all the way to March 2021? Explain that. All of you civilians out there who know nothing about military, explain that. All of you veterans who have argued out there, a few of you, not a lot of you, but the few, you can't explain it either. Because you don't know laws. You're all DD 214, no laws and orders. So that's a call to wake your butt up. Go study our laws and orders, separate than federal. Go study ours. Study how the military operation functions. Saying that, they're just training. All the stuff you heard about the aircraft a couple years ago. Oh, they're just training. No, they're not. It's not how the reserve works. Not how the National Guard operation functions. When Title 10's involved, there's something going on. So there's a lot of things that can show you that. But January the 2021, 3 cannons. Outside, the National Guard didn't salute the motorcade. We always salute a moving flag first, President second. All right? Always. They performed Amazing Grace for Joe. First time Amazing Grace had ever been sang for an inauguration? Amazing Grace? It's a funeral song. It's not, you Googled it. You Google, what's the #1 most popular funeral song? Amazing Grace. But it's also in Army publications. They use them for bagpipes, playing Amazing Grace for funerals. All right. Then you had your commissioned officer. So Army regulations, it is the Army who's the Presidential Salute Battery. Army regulations, 600-25, 2-3 cannon salutes. Go check it out. Go to Army Regulation 600-25. The dash matters. All right. 2-3 cannon salutes. It says a commissioned officer to be present at every cannon salute. No matter what kind of salute it is, whether it be a 3 volley or 21 gun, should be a commissioned officer present. Why wasn't there a commissioned officer for Joe? So see, now you have what I call a bookend. It's a bookend. So you have this side, and you have the middle. Every president, President Trump 2017, back to Nixon 1969, that's on YouTube, 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired in the National Capital Region. Then you have President Trump now, new bookend. 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, National Capital Region. Guess what you see by the cannons? Commissioned officer. Now you have the little inside, what I call the PB&J. Now the jelly and the peanut butter. Now you go back and see 3 cannons for Joe at Arlington. And I love to do this as I'm closing because I'm getting close to closing. And I love to do this just for the fun of it. I welcome all the haters and the liberals to come over from X and get schooled on laws and orders, but this is fun. I had a hater a couple years ago, claimed to be an Army veteran. You can't ever tell because these people don't show their face or their real name. But just for the fun of it, let's say they are. They said they were Army 20-something years, and they go, Derek Johnson's lying. I got him. He's lying. First off, again, you can be 100% wrong without being a liar. You can be 100% wrong without being a criminal. You can be 100% wrong without being something that's a bad person. You can just be 100% wrong. But a liar that's the term. And you Republicans, conservatives, especially you big podcasters out there, some of you do listen to me, or you see excerpts of me, stop using the term lying. Don't do that. Say that's misinformation, false information, and then show where. Don't use the term liar. Just someone can be 100% dumb, 100% ignorant, 100% wrong without being a liar. And if you'll stop doing it yourself, then we can put a quell to all that and go, look, if we're all about our nation, we should be trying to figure out what's right for everything. Stop making people wrong. Stop trying to be wrong. Stop, belittling people for being wrong. Things like that. Just say, hey, you're wrong, and here's why, and here's how, and here's the information. You don't have to like it, but here it is. So this person said I'm a liar. And I'm like, okay, rhino or closet liberal or liberal. One or the other, and they're all ignorant as well. So 3 cannons at Arlington. You go to arlingtonnationalcemetery.mil. It straight up says the 3 volley salute seen or heard at Arlington is not a 21-gun salute. The 3-volley salute seen, there's your census, or heard at Arlington is a military funeral service. And so this hater goes, well, the 3 cannons are always at Arlington. Just prove my point. See, this person was so focused on making me wrong, on making me a liar, on making themselves correct, on making themselves right, on bringing attention to themselves that they actually proved the point. You proved the point. Thank you, hater. You proved it. And you validated all the people out there who are studying for the right reasons, who are trying to get things right for the right reasons, the correct reasons. You proved it. In the history of January the 20th, of all the January 20th, there's never been cannons shown at the Arlington National Cemetery wreath laying. Why? Because they didn't want to confuse it with the presidential inauguration 21-gun salute. They've never shown that. They've shown you the 4 cannons in the National Capital Region with the commissioned officer present, but they've never shown you the cannons at Arlington to confuse it with the 21-gun salute. So now you have bookend proof. President Trump, normally the president, they swear in, they do a review of the troops, and then they get in the motorcade and they go to Arlington. President Trump went to Arlington January the 19th, 2025, not after he swore in. Very key. They put an emphasis on that as a focal point. So now you have a bookend. They put Arlington there. Did they show you the cannons at Arlington with President Trump? No, they did not. On January the 20th, 2025, what did they show you? 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, National Capital Region, not at Arlington, with a commissioned officer present there. Bingo! 21-gun salute. Now go back to Joe. The first time in U.S. history, they've shown you 2 different cannon sets on January the 20th. They showed you 3 cannons at Arlington with Joe, for Joe. They showed you 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, at Joint Base Andrews when the whole world thought President Trump was flying off into the sunset. Red carpet rollout. The official presidential salute battery. The media told you this is the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the presidential salute battery, also known as the Old Guard. They're the oldest unit active in the Army. They don't mess up, ladies and gentlemen. I went to artillery school. I'm an artillery guy. All right? They're not artillery. Even though they're cannons, they're not artillery. They're mortarmen. This is all they do year-round. The salutes. They didn't get that wrong, ladies and gentlemen. And they showed you that day 2 different cannon sets. All right? It's all unique and different for a reason. It's to separate that. It is a focal point. So it validates that. So, now, again, President Trump, where he trips the average person, where he trips the people who, see, people will go, I might read that, but then they'll hear President Trump say something, and then they go, oh, well, he's validating me. Because you're only being validating in your own little world. You're still not reading laws and orders if you do what I'm about to show you. So President Trump recently said, if I was president, this would have never happened. He's been saying this all along the way. He's saying if he'd have been president when all these other corrupt people were doing what they weren't supposed to be doing. He's just saying, had I been president, this wouldn't have taken place. Ukraine war, ladies and gentlemen, started in 2014. It didn't start in 2022. All right, so see, little things like that. When he says, if I was president, Ukraine would have never started. It started in 2014. It's little things like that. They established a new date with Ukraine to where nobody from 2022 past can claim that they were a part of bringing this war to a close that started way back. And it's really been ongoing since the early 90s and late 80s. However, just for sake of, because there is a declared war February 27th, 2014, they reestablished a new date, February 22nd, 2022, to put a line in the sand that President Trump gets all the gratification and also all of it. All of the rewards, award, everything. He's the one that gets the recognition for bringing the war to a close. So that's why they put a new date there. That's why he says if I'd have been president, this would have never started. But it started in 2014. So they put a new date there where nobody from February 21st all the way back, they can't say I was a part of this. I helped bring that war to a close. It's going to be President Trump and his people, the generals. All right. So again, like the new F-47 that he just announced. He said, who named it? The generals named it. See, that's why you got to know. A lot of people fell out of support for me because they heard some dumb podcaster out there ask a general, were we in a military operation? You don't ask a general that. See, that's the other thing that people need to learn. I wasn't a general. I wasn't an officer. So they knew that people would, the ones who listen to me, will listen to me because you're reading, studying, and applying. But there's people out there who went and watched podcasters ask a 3-star general, are we in a military operation? That's a whole different ballgame asking a general, are we in a military operation? So see, a lot of people did what? Lazy, complacent, and go, oh, well, that's a 3-star general, Derek Jonhson. How could he know what he knows? That's a 3-star general saying that. Unbelievable, man. And you can know the whole time. It's all public laws and orders. He can't talk about that stuff because he's in a whole other bracket. These generals are in these operations. The good generals that are a part of it. And you can have some generals sit back in their retirement fat and happy and don't care. But the good generals involved know exactly what's going on. And I validate it every day. I'm validated daily. President Trump don't take pictures with people just because either. All right, he knows who's around him, especially during this time period. So now, as I close, this is so much fun because, again, this is how you get liberals right now. All liberals, Democrats, rhinos, all those people who are argumentative with you, you know, whatever they've done to you, shunned you, laughed at you, ridiculed you, mocked you, don't like you anymore, called you a name. I've been called everything under the sun. Let me tell you, I've been called everything. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can take it, here's the way I do it. First off, I'm going to read this scripture right here. And I'm like I said, I'm human. People judge me all day long. People hate me and don't know why. Hate away. Here's your proof. All right. And I pulled it up because I like the King James Version. John 15:18, verse 2, the dash matters, through 27. If the world hates you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, I have chosen you out of the world. Therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. But all these things that will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know him not sent me, God the Father. If I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin. But now they have no cloak for their sin. He that hateth me hates my Father too. Whew. Man, that is so powerful right there. He that hates Jesus Christ hates God too. If I had not done among them the works which none other man did, they had not had sin. But now have they both seen and hated both me and my Father. But this cometh to pass that the word might be fulfilled, that it is written in their law, they hated me without a cause. But when the Comforter is come, when I will send unto you from the Father, even the Spirit of truth, which proceedeth from the Father, he shall testify of me. And ye shall bear witness, because ye have been with me from the beginning. So, like the Bible tells you, You either believe in it or you don't. There's a scripture for everything. That's why a lot of Christians look atrocious right now. Did you know President Trump quoted again this past time? Most Christians didn't even register to vote before this. Most were not registered to vote. Christians. And they're the most judgmental of people. Let's preach. Let me preach here. Look at all these rhinos jumping shit with President Trump. Rhinos claiming to be Republicans, conservatives, because they don't know anything about laws and orders in place that he's put into place. That all he's done, he ain't even put a lot of them in place. He's invoked 95% of ones that's already been in laws. And we got Christians now. Christians hating on Jews. Jews ain't the ones to be hating on. You must not know the Jesus Christ that you serve. Woo! Preach! You don't know anything about the Jesus Christ that you serve, who was a Jew. All right? I'm seeing all these messages come in a lot about, my friend Siggy, etc. You don't know anything about Jesus Christ. If you're against Jews right now, you don't know anything. It ain't them you should be worried about. We should be teaming up with them. That shows you right there, ye of little faith. But it also shows you, patriots, real patriots, who the rhinos are. It shows you who the wolves in sheep's clothing are. It shows you the wheat from the chaff. Separate from them. Get away from them. People hate me and don't even know why. They've been told to hate me, or they're just straight up ignorant. I've been called everything under the sun. And when I think about that, I read this scripture. Then I think of President Trump. Hated. Look at Elon. Hated. All these people are hated for straight up laws and orders that are in place that they didn't put into law. So if you're truly a patriot out there, and you're in your community, and your town, and your neighborhoods, and your friends, your family, etc., don't worry about the haters. Don't worry about the naysayers. Don't worry about the wolves. God's word tells you in the 23rd Psalms, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thine art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Then he tells you, I will prepare a table in the presence of your enemies. Think about that. Now, I learned from my Jewish friends, Hebrew, that death in that context doesn't mean death like death. Death in that context means in the dark. Yea, though I walk through the dark shadows, the dark. Just anything dark. So it means when you're in a dark world, God's still with you. When you're in a dark place, God's still with you. Wherever you are, God's still with you. All right? So the world's going to hate you. And they're going to make up stuff about you. They're going to lie on you. They're going to say all kinds, because they're not of God. They're not of any of that. You're going to be accused of things. Boy, I got a buddy 5 years ago. This is so funny. I have a buddy, and I'm not going to say his name because he's famous, but I have a buddy, and I asked him about, when you do blow up, and you do get popular, you get famous, whatever term you want to put on it, but you get popular and famous, like, how do you deal with negative publicity? He goes, bro, he said, dude, you're going to be accused of everything under the sun. You're going to have a girlfriend in every state. You're going to have a wife in every state. You're going to sleep with everything in every state. He said, bro, 50% love you, and they stick with you. 50% hate you, and they don't know why, or they're all time trying to start something about you, lie about you, accuse you of something, all kinds of... He said, it is what it is, bro. And I'm like, man. And this was before any kind of billboard, anything. This is before anything for me. And so that's why you got to believe in what you believe in. So because if you are one of those out there yourself, it can happen to you because we're in a social media world. If you blew up with a post or something, you better be ready for it. Be prepared to stand up for what you talk about, what you believe in, what you say. Because people are going to say, like you have an opinion on something, someone's going to call you a name. Well, you're a this and you're a that just because you have an opinion. It's like, dude, just because you don't like my opinion, don't mean that I'm this, and that. Don't even worry about it. They're always going to label you and think about you. When God himself sends his son, and his son tells you in the word, when it tells you, then look at President Trump. It's like he said March the 4th. He said, there's not a thing I could say. I could have every cure for every disease, and these people will not stand up. We're in that time, ladies and gentlemen. We are in those biblical times. We're in that. Where brother against brother, it's going to be, we're there. Now, Word says that we're confident and He's with us. But how can we expect to inherit a kingdom of God if we don't fight for it? Right? So it goes back to narrowing down everything, going to a foundation, knowing what's in that foundation. So here's how you get your liberal buddies and your rhinos and your whomevers. This is how you get them. Y'all have already heard me, but the ones that are new here, here's how you get them. You go, okay, so if President Trump is a threat to democracy, if he's a threat to the Constitution, if he's violating laws and orders, then why would Joe Biden continue 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies, all signed and declared by President Trump? Go back to the 4 ways military pairs with federal executive orders, proclamations, national emergencies, treaties. Go back and read unconventional warfare here. The United States government support to resistance is initiated by either a presidential finding or an executive order. So if you want to know what the president's working with, you got to know laws and orders. Now, in years past, they were used against you, the people. That's what the JFK files kind of have an underlying theme there, and I hate to use the word theme, but they do have an underlying theme there of psychological operations. They use death, and it put it in quotations for a reason, but it says they're going to use snipers to shoot at sentries at Guantanamo Bay, resulting in injury or death. Well, that means that you read that in the paper. You would have read that in the paper. Oh, sentry shot at such, and it wasn't no more real than anything, but you could have believed that. So my role is to go, look, do you want to still follow what the news is telling you? Because they're under a wartime code, 47 United States Code, section 606. It's a wartime order. So you just saw the article put out just a day ago that President Trump issued a wartime order. Well, guess what comes with that wartime order? 47 United States Code, section 606. The Telecommunications Act of 1996, which he can control radio, TV, and internet broadcast. So he can tell them what to say and what not to say. So a lot of this stuff, if you want to follow propaganda and drama, you got it all day long. Go watch mainstream media and just pretend that all that stuff's real. Or, divider in the sand, line in the sand, you can know the laws and the orders put into place by military first, paired with federal, and see what's actually going on by lawful orders of the president, Congress, military. It's that simple. Because if President Trump was a former president, then there's a bunch of things you can go and say, well, if he's a former, what was he doing saluting all during 2022, 2023, 2024? Why was he saluting? Just because you become president don't mean it exempts you from being a veteran or not. So there's that. All right. Little things. The little things. Just those are little things. Those are regulations more than they are anything in customs. So just those little things. And then we can get into laws and orders. For example, you look at the liberals all over X, all over Twitter. Oh, he's a felon. What are you doing electing a felon? A felon, a felon. Okay, if he's a felon, then if I came to you and said, all right, I got 2 options for you. Here's 2 by law. 1, you can accuse President Trump of things you can't prove. You can say he sent all these text messages and or etc. and make up false messages. You can fabricate dossiers, etc. But, you can make all these messages and say he messaged you this and that in a world of technology that can be prefabricated and also photoshopped and all these things, and stir up drama and propaganda and say that he was with some prostitute way back in the day. You can do that. And then we'll get our lawfare to prosecute him, all right, because we'll fake all this. Or, I got a better thing for you, but it's up to you. President Trump met with 12 foreign leaders 13 different times from April 2024 to December 2024. President Trump told everybody on the 2020 campaign trail, it was you, Joe. It was you, Joe, who recommended to Obama the what? The Logan Act on General Flynn. And General Flynn was just a 3-star general director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He wasn't a president. All right, so, big deal still. Director, intelligence, but he wasn't a president. General Flynn was not a president. So if Joe Biden as vice president told his president, Obama, hey, we can use the Logan Act on General Flynn and drag his life through the ruckus and everything, then why didn't Joe Biden as president use the Logan Act on President Trump if he was a former president? Because the Logan Act is 18 United States Code Section 953. There's your federal crimes. Title 18 is federal crimes and criminal procedures. It's a federal. That is straight up federal. All right. 18 United States Code Section 953 is titled this. It says private correspondence with a foreign leader. And President Trump, the whole world, as a jury, saw this all over the news, all over Twitter, all over everything. President Trump meeting at Mar-a-Lago, private establishment. Trump Tower, private establishment with foreign leaders, 12, 13 different times in April to December 2024 alone. And Joe says that President Trump is a threat to democracy and a threat to the Constitution. And they could have invoked the Logan Act, but also, because that would be a federal crime, they could have invoked what? The 14th Amendment, and also they could have invoked the 25th Amendment on President Trump. But they instead let President Trump have a chance for you, the people, to vote him back in. It's that simple. It's really that simple. If President Trump would have been in a normal 4 years, if this was a normal 4 years, and you had witnessed all these unique things you've never seen before in your life, if this was a normal 4 years, Joe Biden and Obama letting it be open when he was breaking all kinds of federal law, if he was a former president, letting him walk back in to get the presidency, no one could be saying anything. It still wouldn't be right if that would have been true, but no one could be saying anything. So their own people should be mad at them if they still don't want to believe that this is a strategic operation, a bipartisan operation, which it is. But if they don't want to believe that, then all the liberals and Democrats should be annihilating all the Joe Biden and Obama and Bill Clinton and Hillary, anything that has something attached to them. They should be wiping their rear ends on whatever they got, wherever they are, their companies, etc. Whatever they have that links to them, that's what liberals and Democrats should be doing, if anything. Because again, an executive order right here, initiated by presidential finding or executive order, this is unconventional warfare, which is overthrowing a government or an occupying power. You have all your terminology with President Trump: occupied territory, law of war manual. You have your capitulation, law of war manual, white flag of surrender, law of war manual. He told you, I gave Angela Merkel the white flag of surrender. Who else talks like that unless it's a military operation? That's all military terms. So you have this executive order. An executive order, ladies and gentlemen, does not require legislation. It's a president, a pen, and a paper. That's it. President, pen, and paper. A national emergency has an automated 2-year termination clause with it if it's not continued at that 2-year date of which it was declared. There's 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies alone, not just the executive orders that President Trump and other presidents had that's being used right now. Just 8 national emergencies and 8 executive orders together alone that Joe continued 4 years in a row by President Trump that would have terminated in 2 years. Those 8 executive orders alone, with those 8 national emergencies, are the very executive orders that's enforcing the law of Doge, cleaning out the federal government, clean outs, etc. That's the lawful orders. Also the lawful orders taking back the Panama Canal. It's Hong Kong, executive order with national emergency with Hong Kong. That's who's been controlling the Panama Canal, Hong Kong. It's all there. Your combating of your illicit drugs, your fentanyl, and your opioids. Executive Order 13773 by President Trump. Also, Executive Order 13784, President Trump. Also, your Southern Command launching of that with the 22 joint partners. That's all in laws and orders and executive orders 13912. They don't even have a national emergency with it. But that order was not revoked by Joe. All right, so those 1 million reserve components, that order is still in place. It didn't terminate because the verbal national emergency terminated March 13th. Those were separated for a reason. Community notes on X is so wrong on that. This is why it's important you, the people, read, study, and apply, because even community notes, even Elon's community notes is wrong about that. It tells you Executive Order 13912 expired. No, it does not. An executive order does not expire. Not like that, unless it has it term in there, unless the president says, I want this to expire, he can do that. But it don't have that. It's not an expiration just because the verbal national emergency was terminated. Plain and simple. So these 8 executive orders are draining the swamp. Those are the very executive orders. Again, combating the trafficking. All of it. So why would Joe continue those if President Trump's a threat to democracy and a threat to the Constitution and violating laws and orders? Same laws and orders. You can't, that's a double standard. That's an oxymoron. Saying that he's a violation of laws and orders and you're continuing the same executive orders? That's enforcing all the others that the military is taking the orders of. There's visuals daily of the aircraft flying around under those orders. Yemen's one of those executive orders established by Obama. And you have the liberals all over X. Oh, President Trump, you Republicans, conservatives, you bragged about how he didn't start a war. He started a war with Yemen. No, he did not. Executive order from 2012, Obama, national emergency. No. So see, there's exactly right there. There's a prime case of how dumb and ignorant liberals are. They're Constitution in word only. They don't know anything about the Constitution. They never quote anything outside the Constitution. And rhinos are pretty much the same. That's why you don't want to be a Republican or a conservative by title. You want to be a patriot. You want to be a reader, a studier of the foundation and the premise of why you're here and what our military is operating with, what our president's working with. It's all laws and orders, and it's bipartisan. All of these, again, are Article 1, legislative. Suspension of the Constitution, legislative. Article 2, the border, presidential, executive. All right, but it's a joint. So, again, there's multiple people involved in this. Not just Republican, not just a bunch of white men beating their chest, testosterone, oh, we'll show you. No, it's bipartisan and it's humanitarian. Yemen was already started. Israel, 2018, 2019, all aligned. It's all there. Started in our military publications first. Most of you wouldn't have seen that because you're not military. That's okay. But it told you that $572 million was allotted for underground activities. What is this? Unconventional warfare? Underground activities. What's the resistance pyramid say? Underground activities. Underground. Subterranean warfare. What is the Army publications that they were teaching all our war colleges starting in 2019? Subterranean warfare. President Trump is the first president to put into place an implementation plan for subterranean warfare. We had tunnel rats in the 70s. Special Forces did some things with that as we've gone through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, but President Trump is the first to put it in publications. And then the one that brings it home is this. All of you are seeing articles right now of the naval ships going down to the southern border. Navy ships. And it says they're running the coast of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. So not just Texas. In the Gulf of what? America. That's what all the articles read, baby. All right, Coast Guard saying that, Navy saying that. Coast of America. The Gulf of America. All right, so there's that. The Coast Guard operates with the Navy. It's not the other way around. The Navy is Department of Defense. The Coast Guard, and I love and respect our Coast Guard. They need more respect than what they get. The Coast Guard basic training is the same as Marine Corps basic training. They are some tough cookies, men and women. All right, but the Coast Guard are Department of Homeland Security until wartime. They are transferred under the Department of Defense, under the Department of the Navy. It's not the other way around. The Navy don't work with the Coast Guard. It's not reversal. That's very key. All right. Have the Coast Guard been in operations before with the Navy? Yes, they have. But right now you're seeing a bigger, hardcore operation with the Southern Command counter-narcotics operation April the 1st, 2020. The 22 joint partners. That's why it's very key. I'm not going to say that we made it so far. Hopefully it'll last a little bit longer. But that's why the Netherlands have been operating in certain places that absolutely prove you're in that 2020 operation still to this day. That command, the Executive Order 13773 and the 13784. All right, President Trump's orders. The 13773 are under the task force assigned by Ronald Reagan. That's why President Trump put his picture up in the office. All right, Ronald Reagan, the Drug Attachment Force, all right, is over the OCD ETF. Go look that up by that acronym. And you'll see on the official website of the About Me, President Trump's Executive Order 13773. And it ties in to the forces of the April 1st, 2020, in that same first 180 days under Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. All right, still there. All right, the Netherlands have been in other nations right now operating. They were in Saudi Arabia earlier today. All right, that tells you right there. And they were also in another country that I've mentioned near Pakistan. Maybe I can say that and won't trigger it. But they've been in and out. They've also been in and out of Hong Kong. So there's that as well. The Netherlands are one of those 22 joint partners with that Southern Command launching the counter-narcotics operations April the 1st, 2020. It tells you it's a world operation. Also today, coming in the U.S., Czechia, okay, was in Israel today and Egypt and also the United States today. I've shown you that last year. They're operating again right now as we speak. I've got those photos I'll post up. But all three nations. So when you go to the Israel publication from 2019 with the United States Army War Colleges, Israel, it talks about the cross-border operations with Gaza and Egypt. And guess who was in there today? The MFO. Go look them up. All right, I'll show you all that. And I've shown all that. They've been doing this, and Czechia is doing this today in the U.S., in Egypt, and in Israel today alone. And they've been there. All right, so that's your validity, again, way back, these launchings way back here. The operation's still ongoing. So your Navy, as I close, your Navy going down to the Texas border, as close as they can get down there with Navy ships. Well, if you believe that President Trump are deploying troops to the border now, then who put 14 states there in February 2024? Because President Trump was the only person, I put quotations around it because he was not a former president, but he's the only out of Joe Biden and himself that was at Del Rio, Texas. He was the only seen throughout 2021 to 2025, he was the only seen with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general of Texas, President Trump. It don't matter what you thought you saw with Joe in Brownsville, Texas, and Kamala in Arizona and New Mexico, where she was. President Trump is the only person in the classification of president that was with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general of Texas. So who put the 14 states at the border in 2024 when President Trump was the only one seen in a ranked structure, all right, ranked structure, commander-in-chief, governor, and adjutant general. Remember what I said over here in a joint publication? It says unless the Constitution or the Congress says what? And then you come over here to the unconventional warfare, and then you also then go look at the adjutant general definition. The adjutant general reports to the state chief executive, the governor, unless, there's that unless again, remember over there in Joint Publication 3-57, unless the Constitution or Congress, unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. Title 10 is presidential authority. Title 10 is federal authority. The reserve components are what President Trump invoked with Title 10, Section 12302, March 27, 2020. 1 million reserve components. The only Title 10 that Joe had in an executive order was Executive Order 14097, which was a follow-up to Executive Order 14059. And it didn't have Title 10 in it. It had Title 10 over here in this. It wasn't that kind of order. It wasn't that big an order. It was a continuation, meaning there were other Title 10. President Trump's invoked Title 10 again in his other executive orders. But way back here in 2020, it's important because that's 1 million reserve components. All these troops that you're seeing movement out of are coming out of that 1 million reserve components. It's a lot of troops. All right, so you're seeing all those troops now from 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Those troops are coming out of that 1 million number. It hasn't been revoked. Still in place. So, again, the Adjutant General reports to the Governor of Texas unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. Presidential authority. The only person who can federalize the National Guard and reserve components to active duty is the President of the United States of America. And when Nancy Pelosi, that's why they distracted people. This is how easy it is to distract people. In January 2021, when they said when Nancy Pelosi has no say-so over the military whatsoever. That's how you know you're watching a movie. It's all an operation, strategic operation. Nancy Pelosi has no bearing on the United States military whatsoever. None. Presidential only. Title 10, presidential only. That's why you got to pay attention to Title 10 versus Title 32 and Title 14. So in Executive Order 13912, guess what was also invoked from March 27, 2020? 4 titles of Title 14. Your Coast Guard. What was the Coast Guard Commandant doing over in Saudi Arabia this past week? What was he doing over there? What's the Coast Guard? What have they been doing flying? 101 and 102. What have they been doing flying all over the world? I have the Coast Guard. I have the head dog of the Coast Guard in multiple countries. Why? If we're not, then why? They're not just training. If a veteran tells you that, they have no clue what they're talking about. They're all DD-214, no military laws and orders. That's unfortunate. It is, and I'll keep saying it because if they care, they'll read what's invoked right now that outlines a true blueprint outline that everybody can know. It's all public. So if you have a veteran friend or family member or whatever, and they're saying it's all hogwash, they don't know. They're all DD-214, no military laws and orders. So, again, you could be a 4-star general. You could be a 5-star general. If you don't know what's invoked, if you went off to your happy place, and you kicked that lazy boy back, and you popped you open a can of Vienna sausages, and you're drinking an RC Cola, and you're watching March Madness right now, then if they don't know what's currently invoked, it don't matter what rank they are, what their DD-214 looks like, it don't matter how decorated they are, it doesn't matter. If they don't know what's currently invoked, they're just no different than the lowest level civilian out there. And no offense to that. But again, if you don't know what's in place, what's current, what's invoked in public laws and orders with the visuals there, you can be just as blind as anybody else if you're a veteran. So if you're a veteran, you should be stepping up to the plate more than anybody else right now. Because you might actually have a clause in there. You might have a reserve clause. Some of you have missed the window. They had open, volunteer, and involuntary reserve callback. You missed your window. You could, if you wanted to serve again, you could have. But because you don't know laws and orders, you missed that opportunity. And you would have got paid for it as well. So that's why it pays to know the laws and the orders of military first and then second. So Texas proves President Trump is not a former president whatsoever. He put the dash there. The dash has already been done before in history. Slightly different. But also keep in mind, when President Trump was at Black History Month with Tiger Woods, this is really cool. When he said, should I run 4 more years? And the crowd started roaring, right? And the liberals were, oh my gosh, what in the world? Go back to February 2024. When President Trump was in Texas with the Adjutant General and the governor, they had John Bolton, who got his security clearance revoked. They had John Bolton on CNN. And he was asked a question. This is one time reading fails you. But on the bottom it says, can President Trump run a second term with all these accusations, etc. on him? This is one time reading fails you. I tell you to read. This one time reading fails you. You got to listen. Go back and watch the clip. It's live. It's still there. It's on YouTube. It's on my pages. All right. But John Bolton was asking President Trump run a second term with all the trials against him. And John Bolton says what? He said the Constitution specifically bars President Trump from a third term. Third term. But knowing President Trump like I do, he will seek to ratify the Constitution in order to run another time. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It goes back to what I talked about, 1951. Congress put term limits on the president, but not themselves. Violation of the Constitution. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution. Allow me to read that for you. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, the executive power shall be vested in a president, not the, in a president of the United States of America, not the United States of America. Very key. President Trump's been signing off on all of his truths, the United States of America, not the United States. Very key. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. Nowhere in our Constitution does it say that the Congress has the power to put term limits on the president. Our founders left that open. That is why Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected 4 times by the people. He was in his 13th year, 4th term, when he died in office. Had he lived, he would have served 16 years. And he could have been elected again if that's what the people wanted. So all of these idiots out there you hear talking about, oh, a king, oh, we don't elect kings in the U.S. It ain't about if you're electing them, then that's the will of the people. See, it goes back. He's not being appointed. If we're electing them, that's what the will of the people is. And our presidents, our former president, but especially George Washington, and our founders, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, all those guys, our founders, that's why they left that open. All right? So, it's really, I mean, I know I say it all the time. It's really that simple. So that's why you got to know your laws and your orders. That's why you got to know the Constitution. And that's why you got to not listen to certain people. Because certain people will get you confused. They'll make you mad, frustrated, angry, bitter. Put them aside. The Bible does say he's not the author of confusion. Therefore, he has to be the author of completion. All right? And he also tells you, I didn't give you the spirit of fear, but love, power, and sound mind. So it means you got a sound mind to think clearly, to talk clearly, but also to block what you don't want to hear in your life. Walk away from it. Put it down. Don't allow it in your life. Don't accept that. But the way that shows you that you're not grounded in a foundation is when you're being shaken all the time. If you're being confused, if you're being shook up, all Elvis, all shook up, if you're being shook up and upset and bitter and tired and frustrated and weary and mad and sad and moaning and groaning and griping and fussing and cussing and kicking and complaining, then you're not grounded on what you should be grounded on. Period. Because again, if you know the foundation, then you'll have it in your heart. You'll just know it. You'll hear it. You can have it here because those work together. But that's why I know this stuff like the back of my eyelids is because it's right here first. I love this stuff. I love our nation for the right reasons. All right? And all the people who hate you and try to ridicule you, mock you, and all these other things, Jesus Christ couldn't get to the cross without Judas. Always remember that. So, you know, even our greatest example of all time, look at all the people who did that to President Trump because they were in it for money, greed, all these other things. That's how dumb these liberals look. A billionaire, money's nothing to them. It's nothing. And you got to look at them. You got to look at President Trump and the way he lives his life. He keeps wealth because he don't spend it on stupid stuff. He don't spend money on dumb things. Look at what he wears all the time. He could be wearing all kinds of suits, all kinds of ties. He could be driving all kinds of cars. They don't spend money on stupid stuff like Americans do. So all these people talking about, billionaire and this, that, and that. There's only 36 billionaires in the world. Or the U.S. I'd go back to look. But, these liberals are focused on this one little point. If a billionaire is your problem, you got a problem. If you let someone get you all mad and frustrated, you got the problem. It ain't them. You allowed that in your life. You allowed to be shook up. You allowed that. You allowed your emotions to go there. People hate me. It don't bother me. People call me names. It don't bother me. I don't let it shape me like that. They can ridicule, mock, hate, laugh, cuss, fuck, whatever they want to do. Call you names. Big deal. If they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they wouldn't be doing that. If they were grounded on the right principles and faith and laws and orders, they wouldn't be doing that. So that's all you got to do to yourself. You go, okay, if you know it, that's all you need. That's all. You are living your life. You're the one living, breathing. And if there ain't nobody there when you take your last breath, you may not need some people there. There may be some people talking over you, talking bad about you while you're dying. So you look, you're walking this walk. It's all about you, your faith, where you're grounded, your belief, your principles. Live your life. Don't worry about anything else. People are going to talk. They're going to hate you. It ain't a thing in the world you can do to change them. So just keep doing your thing. Study the laws and orders. Get grounded on the laws and the orders. That's all that matters. And then knowing the laws and the orders, you'll know the fruits of the Spirit. You'll know the fruits of labor by knowing that first. See, so many people can't receive their blessing because they don't know the fruits of the Spirit. They don't even know the fruits of labor. So like all these rhinos especially, Republicans, conservatives, against President Trump all of a sudden, for what? Because you don't know laws and orders. It's real simple. You can't see the fruits of the Spirit and fruits of labor because you don't even know anything about the fruit. These are people who, they only know the fruit tree when it blooms. They know it's an apple tree after it's bloomed. They don't go through the season of planting, the season of fertilization, the season of cultivation. They don't go through that. They don't see the rain. They don't want the rain. They only want the bloom. That's what kind of people we're dealing with. Liberals especially, but rhinos. They only know the fruit when it blooms. They don't want to go through all the other stuff. And so if you're a true warrior, you're a true patriot, enjoy the planting. Enjoy the fertilization. Enjoy the cultivation. Enjoy the rain. Enjoy the growth, because when the harvest comes, you have weathered all that. You went through all of it. And you learn what works and what doesn't work. You learn what is and what ain't. You learn that, and it goes into your what? Your wisdom bank. You also learn what people you can and can't trust. You learn what people will and won't. You learn the ones that put the giant red X on their forehead. You learn that. And it makes you a better person. And it makes you tighten your circle. And then when you tighten your circle, you're eliminating all the what? The stuff that shakes you off your foundation or tries to shake you. Or tries to hop on your ankle and just go for a ride. And you go, kick them off. So see, when you apply that and don't let anything else, people get mad at your opinion. Let them get mad. Let them get mad. Who cares? So, foundation is important. What President Trump's working with, if you love President Trump, if you love President Trump, you got to know what he's working with. That's what he's working with. That is an operation. Imagine putting a barrier around that. That's an operation. That is a strategic operation and a strategic plan right there. Now, when we get here to this portion, it's not going to end, but just for sake of, this is an operation. I'm done with the Make America Great Again hat. thank you for your service. We're going to put you up over here, right here. All right, so know your foundation. Get it right here. When you get it here, it'll come out here because it'll be up here and it'll come right out of here. Know everything. And then share this video. Hey, all you got to do is share it. Hey, look, I'm already used to it. I'm used to everything. I am used to everything again. So if you don't want to repeat it, you don't think you can, say, hey, fam, hey, friend, right here. You on Instagram, when this video is done, because the live feed goes away, the live comments, when I post it, come back on, tag every liberal you want. I don't care. Tag them. Ain't nothing they can say to me going to hurt me at this point. Liberals, rhinos, you name it, tag them. There's a particular patriot on Instagram. She is a patriot like nobody's business. She tags me on everything. She tags people and says, go watch this guy. She is a true patriot. All right, that is somebody she's saying, hey, I don't care about my name either. If you ridicule me, hey, it's all right here. So if you love President Trump for the right reasons and you love our armed forces for the right reasons, this alone, of course, this is part 2, but part 1. I mean, it had to be done this way. If you wanted it all in one location, it had to be done this way. So when people say, oh, he's a grifter and all this, that shows they're a rhino or a liberal as well, because we're in a capitalist market. And there was no other way to put all those in a chronological order because they happen so here and there and there. So I put it all in a chronological order. There's another follower of mine, a great person. He's a cool guy. He tells people in every comment box, he said, it's not a book. It's not a novel. It's a workbook. It's designed to put it in front of you with a laptop on your desk, in your lap, whatever you're sitting on. Open it up and to pull up all the websites. All right. We are planning on doing an audio version, so it'll be to where it's audible. We're working on that. All right, but so as of right now, it's designed when you open it up. when I went through college, I hated it. You'd have a book this big, and you'd be like right here, and you had to do just like this. Put your finger there, and you had to go to the back and find these references. And some of them had multiple references in a paragraph. And you'd have to go look those up and read those. I hated that. So when you're going along, the references are right there. You ain't got to go any further. You go, there's the reference, pull it up. And it's like, I'm telling you, I did this as easy as possible because I did everything in college and I hated it. And I love to read and I love to study, but I hated having to do stuff like that. So I made it easy for you to where it's all in a chronological blueprint, chronological order. Now, you couldn't put everything in here. So there may be something missing out of there. There's nothing like major missing. I put all the majors in there. But you couldn't put it. It had been as long as Obamacare, which is long. Right? So there's that. So anyway, it's really that simple. I mean, you're enjoying, and we're not far. It's almost March 24th, basically. So here we are, that close to April the 2nd, Liberation Day, as President Trump calls it. But it has a correlation. Everything has a correlation. All right, but again, history will account for that dash. It's going to account for it. It's got to. The only way we can get through all this and escape politics and the mudslinging and the hate and the ridicule and the mockery, there's got to be a massive come together, which means there's going to be a massive what? Revelation. And it's going to be the other side who exonerates President Trump. It's going to be the other side. There's nothing he can say, nothing I can say. There's nothing any top military Republican, top military conservative, top military period. It's going to be the other side who exonerates President Trump. And they call that the white flag of surrender. All right, so there's so much stuff that you need to come over to my sites. I post a lot more. It's easier to post on Telegram and Facebook because they don't limit you on wording. It's so hard to do it on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And then also True Social. So where I post my longest content, some things require extensive posts. So Telegram and Facebook. Also, look, there's so many fake pages out there. There are hundreds and hundreds of fake pages in the comment box on Facebook. That is not me who's saying, hey, come over to such and such, and they put a telegram. That's not me. My websites are exactly what they show. They're there. All right, and it's on Linktree, LINKTR, period. That's where the period goes. /1776 Nation. That pulls up all of my official accounts. All of them. So, if you're receiving messages from people about QFS and QFS wallets and all this other stuff, or if it sounds like I'm out of a Monty Python movie, hello, my dear, how are you today? I don't talk like that. I don't think you've noticed, like some of you follow me, you're supposed to follow me. I'm as slang as it gets. Sometimes my texts get a little slang, and I have an English professor for a family member to come, hey, you need to correct this. And I'm like, some of it auto-corrects, but some of it's me typing slang. So if you see that, it's not me. All right, so if it's not on my Linktree, it's not mine. I do have a private Facebook that I keep private because of certain friends and family. And then I also have a private Instagram that's kind of leaked out there. I do have a second Instagram I did start just for the sake of, just in case Instagram and their shenanigans with Facebook started up again. But we'll put that one up on there, but I'm not going to be posting on it too often just because it's just a secondary if I ever need it. But again, little things like that, that's how you find me. All right, the other thing, we have so many people trying to hack and whatnot. So if you get a message and it's coming from an official a page, then we have had to go in and reset certain things because you have hackers out there. Man, I got a coder that does my websites. He said, bro, if you knew how many people are trying to hack our website, people think that I got something hidden over here for them to see, something secretive, like all, military intel and stuff. So there's so many people. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful for accusations. If you're receiving something, it could be a hacker. But most of the time it's a faker. It could be a hacker though. So you got to be careful with accusations out there. So a lot of things out there you got to be careful with. We're in a world of technology. It's good when it's good, but it's bad when it's bad. So be careful. All right. So be careful who you're following. Also be careful the pages. There's some fake pages of mine have 100,000 followers. One fake page has 100,000 followers. I cannot comprehend that to save my life. How I go on podcast after podcast and I'll slap myself and say it's me. Here's my official sites and people still follow the fake accounts. It is beyond me. But anyway, if you want these, if you're international, then you got to get on Amazon. If you want them signed by me, then you got to go through me. Rattletrap1776.com. RATTLETRAP1776.com. Click on Get More Gear, and then it'll send you over to the official page. So there's two-part process of that when you go to the website. So it's real simple. And then I got some new shirts out just for the sake of. One of my top sellers is the new one about the orange and how they pick on Orange Man bad. Well, you better not be messing with Orange Man bad because orange is the new, you know what. So, anyway, I'm going to get off of here. We're going to post this on Rumble shortly. And I'll be back this week a lot sooner than next Sunday because so much stuff's rolling out. And I do realize a lot of people have a lot of questions. So, if you have questions, send them to my inbox. I'll do my best to correlate them into what you're seeing and what President Trump's doing all through the week, what he's putting out, all the different things. So just like the security clearances, all that stuff, it's all part of the plan. It's already been there. It's already done that. So stuff in Supreme Court, well, there's docket cases. We'll talk about this week. I'll do a show about the docket cases, and I'm going to put some of those together. And we'll talk about the Supreme Court docket cases that are open, and then correlate those in with all the security clearances being revoked. So I'll talk about that sometime this week when I get a chance.